The Russian Ministry of Defense announced that a coordinated attack operation was carried out last night by warships and submarines of the Russian Black Sea Fleet against a critical military target located in the Odessa port area. It was reported that during the operation, a cargo ship carrying heavy weapons and military equipment from the US and NATO countries to Ukraine was identified and targeted, along with the weapons storage infrastructure in the port. In a statement, the ministry said, "In accordance with the objectives of the Russian Federation's special military operation, a precision strike was carried out to neutralize war materials flowing to the Nazi regime in Ukraine." The statement said, "This operation is a reflection of Russia's will to ensure its own security and protect our compatriots in Donbass." Moscow sources confirmed that the attack was part of a strategy by Western powers to cut off military support for Ukraine and bring the Kiev administration to the negotiating table. In images allegedly from the moments the attack occurred, a large cloud of smoke is seen rising from the port after a major explosion, followed by the firing of air defense systems. The Russian side claims that Ukraine's S-300 and Buk M1 air defense systems made an unsuccessful attempt to intercept Russian missiles, but these defenses were rendered ineffective by a combination of kinetic and electronic warfare measures. The attack reportedly sank the cargo ship MSR Vanguard, burying at least 30 M777 howitzers, thousands of artillery shells, and numerous unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, in the waters of the Black Sea. Russian authorities emphasized that the sinking of the ship is a direct and justified response to the West's policies of provoking and prolonging the war. The statement said, "This ship carried death to the Nazis. We, on the other hand, are acting to bring peace and stability. Western countries are causing more bloodshed by arming the Ukrainian people. Russia has taken on the responsibility to stop this bloodshed," it was stated. Analysts from the Russian Ministry of Defense say this operation goes beyond targeting just a ship or a depot, demonstrating how vulnerable NATO's logistics networks are. It has been proven once again that the weapons provided by the West to Ukraine can be destroyed before reaching the front lines. This situation raises serious doubts about Kyiv's long-term war capability. In a statement on the matter, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said, "The US and its allies have turned Ukraine into a proxy battlefield. As long as they continue to send weapons, Russia will exercise its legitimate right to eliminate this threat. The target in Odessa was completely legitimate in this context," he said. Lavrov called on Western countries to stop interfering in Ukraine's internal affairs and to abide by the Minsk agreements. Russia's permanent representative to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, stated at an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, "Russia is eliminating the existential threat against it. Odessa has become a hub for arms trafficking," he stated. "Our actions fall under the scope of legitimate self-defense within the framework of international law." We continue with developments on the front line. A Zala Lancet UAV crew from the 3rd Combined Arms Army of the Russian Southern Group of Forces located and destroyed a militant pickup truck belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces near the village of Zakotne. Russian FPV operators detect and destroy Ukrainian vehicles and soldiers in the Sumy region. The Ukrainian armed forces were transporting troops and supplies to the front lines in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Numerous Ukrainian trucks carrying troops and cargo were destroyed by precision strikes using kamikaze drones by attack drone teams from the Russian East forces. The Russian Vanya Ivanov group is on duty near the village of Mirnoye, northwest of Pokrovsk. Russian FPV UAVs destroyed a Ukrainian armed forces truck and artillery unit advancing toward the operational area. A new video shows a panoramic view of Pokrovsk. As you can see, Russian attack aircraft appear to be calmly cruising along the northeastern outskirts of the city. This means that almost the entire Denasovi settlement north of Pokrovsk has been completely cleared of Ukrainian forces. Attack drones belonging to the Rykari group, part of Russia's Central Group, effectively blew up a Ukrainian armed forces bunker on the Zaporizhzhia line. Destruction of personnel of the Ukrainian armed forces advancing in the direction of Kupiansk on an ATV. A Russian Iskander-M missile destroyed an air defense system belonging to the Ukrainian Air Force in the village of Zaliznyshnoye in the Sumy region. Drone operators from the Russian 16th Special Forces Brigade on duty destroyed another Ukrainian Armed Forces drone control center near the village of Korovy Yar in the Rubtsovsk region. A truck carrying a Zu-23-2 23mm anti-aircraft dual-automatic cannon belonging to the Ukrainian Armed Forces was destroyed by Russian FPV operators in the Donetsk region. A secret T-64BV tank belonging to the Ukrainian Armed Forces was destroyed in the Dnipropetrovsk region by fiber optic operators from the Snegiri unit of the Russian Vostok Group. All bunkers identified as belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces on the Kharkiv line were destroyed by Russian FPV operators. Ukrainian forces continue to lose strength. A panorama of the town of Belitskoye in the Donetsk People's Republic, occupied by members of the Ukrainian armed forces. Russian center forces have razed Ukrainian defenses to the ground in the Krasnoarmysk direction, where fighting for Belitskoye is currently ongoing, as seen in the footage. Regarding the technical details of the operation, Russian military experts stated that Kalibr cruise missiles and Iskander ballistic missiles were used in the attack. It is claimed that these missiles fly at low altitudes to evade Ukrainian air defense systems and hit targets with meter-level accuracy. Additionally, it is alleged that a comprehensive electronic warfare operation was conducted prior to the attack, jamming Ukrainian radar systems and thus making it difficult to detect the missiles. It is reported that cruise missiles launched by submarines of Russia's Black Sea Fleet traveled undetected to the Ukrainian coast and carried out a sudden strike. This situation indicates that despite the intelligence and early warning systems provided to Ukraine by the West, Russia has maintained its deep strike capability. Military strategy experts in Moscow emphasize that such operations directly affect the military balance on the front lines. Specifically, It is estimated that the destruction of a transport ship and a depot will have a devastating impact on Kyiv's defense lines, especially during this period when the Ukrainian army is experiencing a shortage of artillery ammunition. The Ukrainian side, on the other hand, condemned the attack and called on the international community to take action. In a video address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, "Russia continues its terrorism in the Black Sea." He claimed that civilian port infrastructure was targeted in Odessa today. However, Russia reiterated that the target was definitely not civilian but military in nature, and that the operation was meticulously planned. This move by Russia carries a psychological message as well as a military one. The Kremlin is reminding the West that every weapon it sends to Ukraine becomes a legitimate target, and that these arms shipments are escalating the war instead of ending it. Russia positions itself not as an aggressor, but as a force defending itself against a threat to its borders posed by NATO's expansionist policies. While options such as sending more advanced air defense systems to Ukraine or rerouting sea shipments are on the table, Russia's dominance in the Black Sea and its precise targeting capabilities have once again highlighted the difficulties of protecting this logistics line. In conclusion, the attack on Odessa signals that the Russia-Ukraine war has entered a new and dangerous phase. The war is expanding from the front lines to supply chains and targets in international waters. This situation carries the risk of further escalation of the conflict and a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia. Despite all these risks, Russia has clearly drawn its red lines and announced to the world that it will respond to any move that challenges these lines at the highest level of its military capabilities. In the daily briefing of the Russian Ministry of Defense, it was announced that decisive progress had been made on numerous fronts within the framework of the special military operation. While heavy fighting continues in the Donbas region, it has been reported that a new offensive has been launched toward Kharkiv and that Ukrainian defense lines have been penetrated deep into the Zaporizhzhia front. Russian Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov said, "We are advancing step by step toward all the goals of our operation. We are systematically depleting the military potential of the Ukrainian armed forces, neutralizing all arms shipments from the West," he said. These statements indicate that Russia holds the military initiative on all fronts following the successful port operations in Odessa. Intense fighting is taking place in the Donbas region, particularly around Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, and Avdiivka. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said, "The Russian army, advancing in coordination with Wagner Group units, has established control over the western parts of the city in Bakhmut." He stated that Ukrainian troops are being forced to retreat with heavy losses. Images from the region show that a large part of the city has been reduced to rubble and Russian flags are flying at strategic points. Military experts say the fall of Bakhmut could have a domino effect on Ukraine's defensive lines in the Donbas. Similarly, it is reported that Russian troops have made progress in the direction of Avdiivka, approaching the city center by about 2 kilometers. It is estimated that this progress will largely neutralize artillery attacks on the Ukrainian city of Donetsk. On the Kharkiv front, it was confirmed that Russian troops had launched a new offensive. The Russian Ministry of Defense announced that a limited operation had been launched to weaken Ukraine's military presence in Kharkiv and to cut off reinforcements heading from the border regions to Donbas. As part of the operation, it is claimed that Russian troops advancing toward Vovchansk and Kupiansk have breached Ukraine's first line of defense. While it is reported that humanitarian corridors have been opened for residents of the region to cross into Russian territory, Russian authorities emphasize that the Ukrainian side is using civilian settlements as military bases, making them legitimate targets. It is stated that the Kharkiv operation provided a strategic distraction, preventing Ukrainian forces from focusing on the main front in Donbas. On the Zaporizhzhia front, the situation is quite complex. It is stated that Ukraine's offensive attempts in this region have been largely repelled thanks to the depth of the Russian defense lines and engineering works. The Russian Ministry of Defense shared information that at least 8 tanks and 15 armored vehicles belonging to Ukraine's 26th Mechanized Brigade were destroyed near the village of Robotino. At the same time, it was noted that Russian troops were launching counterattacks to seize the initiative in the region and conducting infiltration operations behind Ukrainian defense lines. Military analysts believe these operations on the Zaporizhzhia front are aimed at disrupting Ukraine's potential plans for an offensive toward Crimea. Russia's Air Force and Navy are also providing strong support to the operations. It is reported that fighter jets belonging to the Air Force are conducting airstrikes against command centers deep within Ukraine, energy infrastructure, and military bases. Specifically, there has been an observed increase in cruise missile attacks on targets in the Dnipro and Vinnytsia regions. The Russian Navy, meanwhile, continues to strengthen its presence in the Black Sea. Following the successful operation in Odessa, it is reported that warships of the Black Sea Fleet have increased their patrol activities to prevent possible sea shipments. At the same time, it is suggested that submarines sailing from the Sevastopol base in Crimea are cruising in the western part of the Black Sea and tracking potential targets. The Ukrainian side, in response to these developments, is demanding more weapons and financial support from the West. However, the depletion of Western countries' weapon stocks and insufficient production capacity are seen as the biggest obstacles to aid to Ukraine. Additionally, it is stated that discomfort with the prolonged war in Western countries is increasing and the search for a diplomatic solution is gaining strength. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said, "Instead of sending weapons to Ukraine, Western countries should persuade the Kiev regime to sit down at the negotiating table." Russia is always open to a diplomatic solution, but on the condition of accepting the current realities. Moscow clarified its position. It is predicted that in the coming days, Russia will begin to reap the rewards of its multi-pronged strategy. Military experts note that progress, especially in the Donbass, could accelerate, and the operation toward Kharkiv could create serious stress on Ukraine's defense lines. At the same time, it is assessed that Russia aims to further weaken Ukraine's war capabilities by increasing attacks on its energy infrastructure. All these developments indicate that Russia's special military operation is being carried out with determination, in line with the initially set goals, and that Moscow is maintaining its will to achieve its military and political objectives in Ukraine, despite Western military support. The course of the war seems to depend on the extent to which Russia's multifaceted strategy succeeds and how long the West can sustain its support for Ukraine. A Russian FPV drone continues its hunting expedition in the Donetsk region. The Ukrainian Armed Forces Lyutik ground robot complex has been detected and destroyed. Reconnaissance drone teams from the Northern Group of Forces identified a temporary deployment point in Kharkiv Oblast, where Ukrainian Armed Forces personnel are located. Attack drone operators launched an operation and destroyed the structure housing Ukrainian soldiers with a kamikaze drone. The operator of an attack drone belonging to the Russian Sever Group accurately hit the firing point of a machine gun crew belonging to the Ukrainian Armed Forces in the Kharkiv border region. During the fighting in the Dnipropetrovsk region, reconnaissance drones belonging to the Russian Eastern Forces spotted several Ukrainian pickup trucks loaded with equipment and ammunition in the rear area of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The attack drones accurately hit the Ukrainian Armed Forces vehicles, preventing the enemy from transporting supplies and weapons. Russian FPV UAV operators continue their operations in the Donbass region without interruption. Numerous Ukrainian vehicles, weapons, and deployment points have been destroyed. On the Kupiansk line, Russian Central Group forces continue their active offensive, destroying Ukrainian armed forces personnel and equipment. Russian troops are operating on their own schedule along the front line. There are no interruptions, and the pressure on Ukrainian forces continues. Special forces units affiliated with the Russian Western faction are carrying out their mission methodically and calmly, locating and capturing Ukrainian soldiers holed up in their positions near Kramatorsk. FPV kamikazes from the 56th Airborne Regiment of the Russian Airborne Forces continue to target Ukrainian armed forces vehicles in Sumy Oblast.